They say the scariest silence is in places where life once thrived. A bustling city hospital that's been closed for over 10 years is just such a place. Even during the day, the silence there is deafening, like the absence of life itself. But after dark, that silence comes alive. It breathes, it stalks, it whispers, and those who venture into it never come out the same. 10 years ago, this place was a hive of activity. People came here seeking help, finding comfort in facing their final moments. Now dust dances in the shafts of moonlight that pierce through grimy windows, swirling around abandoned equipment and forming shapes on the peeling paint of the walls. The air is thick with the metallic scent of rust and old blood. Every footstep echoes, bouncing off the tiled floors and high ceilings. You feel as though you're being watched, not by the shadows cast by the peeling fire exit signs, but by something within the very structure of the building. I was a journalism student at the time, and I convinced my professor to let me film a story about cursed places. I wanted to visit an abandoned asylum, but she suggested I go to this derelict hospital instead. She said it would be easier to get into, which was true. The wrought iron gates were unlocked and swung open with a groan that seemed to echo my own unease. I stepped inside. By the time I reached the main entrance, the sun had dipped below the horizon and darkness pressed against the windows. I hesitated, feeling the weight of unseen eyes upon me. Then I pushed open the door, the glass panes tinkling like shattering bones. Inside, shadows stretched and twisted, taking on monstrous shapes in the flickering light of my camera. I tried to ignore the uneasy feeling that crawled up my spine and focused on my story. As I wandered through the empty wards, I could have sworn I heard the murmur of voices, the rustle of sheets, the squeak of hospital beds being moved. I dismissed it all as the wind playing tricks or my imagination running wild, but then I saw something that made the blood freeze in my veins. In the operating theater, a single scalpel lay on the stainless steel table, glinting under the dim emergency light above. Next to it, a bloody handprint marred the pristine white tiles. It looked recent, as if someone had pressed their palm against the wall in a silent scream. I stood there, paralyzed, watching the shadow of the scalpel dance in the flickering light, daring to hope that I was wrong, that what I was seeing was an illusion born of fatigue and fear. I started to walk away, telling myself it was just a trick of the light. Then the footsteps began. At first, they were faint, like someone hesitantly tapping the floor, testing the strength of their steps. Then they grew louder, more purposeful, echoing through the vast emptiness of the hospital. I quickened my pace, my heart hammering against my ribs, and followed the sound. It led me to a supply cupboard, its doors hanging off their hinges. With a shaking hand, I pushed them open wider, revealing an abyss of shadows within. I peered inside, half expecting to find someone Rum family huddled in the darkness. Instead, there was nothing. I called out, my voice echoing in the confined space. "Hello, is anyone there?" Only silence answered me. I stepped out of the cupboard and continued my exploration, the footsteps following close behind me. As I rounded a corner, I collided with a figure emerging from the gloom. I gasped, stumbling backward. He wore a white doctor's coat, his face hidden in the shadows of his wide-brimmed hat. I fumbled for my camera, my fingers clumsy with fear. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice catching in my throat. He didn't answer. He just stood there, his gaze fixed on me, the faint outline of his face illuminated by the faint light filtering through the grimy windows. He took a step toward me, then another. "Please leave," I stammered, backing away. "I don't want any trouble." "Trouble?" He stopped, and for a moment I dared to hope that he might leave. But then he tilted his head, and a sliver of moonlight glinted off his face, or rather the lack of it. His skin was stretched taut over his skull, smooth and white like polished bone. His eyes were hollow sockets that seemed to suck the light from the room, leaving only an inky black void where life should have been. He opened his mouth, and I could have sworn that instead of a voice, a gust of wind rushed out, rustling the papers on the floor and sending a chill down my spine. "You belong on the table," he rasped, his voice like sandpaper on stone. "Diagnosis forever." He took another step forward, and this time I could see the glint of metal in his hand. I screamed and ran, plunging into the darkness, the sound of my own terror echoing through the empty hospital. I didn't dare look back, but I could hear him behind me, his footsteps silent yet somehow steady, relentless. I raced through the labyrinthine corridors, each turn seeming to lead me back to the same place. The same ward with its peeling paint and haunting silence. And there they were again, the patients. At first, I thought they were just shadows, figments of my fear-addled imagination. But as I passed, I could make out shapes beneath the sheets on the beds, shapes that twitched and writhed. Their eyes were open, staring blankly ahead, lifeless and cold. Were they waiting? Had they been waiting for me? My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't stop. I wouldn't stop. My legs pumped, carrying me further into the bowels of the hospital, further into my nightmare. I burst out of the double doors at the end of the corridor, slamming into the rusted metal fire escape outside. I scrambled up the ladder, each rung protesting under my weight, my fingers scrabbling for purchase on the cold metal. I hauled myself onto the roof, gasping for breath, my heart pounding a frantic tattoo against my ribs. Below me, the ground seemed miles away. Above me, the sky was a black pit of stars. I sat there, trembling, trying to catch my breath, to calm the frantic beating of my heart. Then I heard a soft thud on the roof above me. I froze, my blood turning to ice water. Slowly, ever so slowly, I turned my head to look. There, silhouetted against the star-strewn sky, stood the faceless doctor. His eyes, two black pits in his skull, were fixed on me. He tilted his head, and in the brief flash of lightning, I could see the scalpel in his hand, glinting wickedly in the brief flash of lightning. He opened his mouth, and I could have sworn I heard the scrape of metal on bone, the scrape of the scalpel on the roof. Then he was gone, vanished into the darkness as quickly as he had appeared. Shaken but relieved, I stumbled back into the hospital, making my way to the front doors. I needed to get out, to get as far away from this place as possible. But as I approached the exit, I saw something that made me stop in my tracks. On the floor lay my camera, its lens shattered, its inside spilled out on the welcome mat like some macabre offering. Beside it, a single white feather, the only splash of color in the monochrome nightmare. I reached for it, my fingers brushing against its smooth surface. Then I looked up. Standing in the doorway was the faceless doctor. In the dim light, his features were obscured, but I could see the glint of triumph in his eyes, the joy of the hunt. He took a step toward me, then another, and I knew that whatever game he was playing, I'd lost. This place was his domain. This place was my last recording, my final story. And as the doctor stepped out of the light, his face still hidden in shadow, I understood that this was where my journey ended and his began. When the sun finally touched the horizon, chasing away the long shadows and revealing the full extent of the damage, search teams entered the hospital, their faces grim with foreboding. But they found nothing, no sign of a struggle, no indication of what had happened here. The only clue was my camera lying abandoned on the welcome mat, its lens shattered, its memory card missing. If you enjoyed this horror story, subscribe and like for more terrifying tales. Until next time, sleep tight and don't feed the faceless doctor.